What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Artisan Cutlery Proponent Smoky Mountain Knife Works exclusive in brass. A lot of you guys remember my unboxing. I was very enthusiastic about this knife. This knife exists in a very strange area of the knife world, being that it is it's a build type that has been in the past indicative of a much higher price tag. You can see some design elements here that look similar to another maker, and the blade is also similar to another maker. There's a lot of elements here that are similar. Not I wouldn't call stolen, just definitely inspired. But in any case, it has the look of a much more expensive knife. Because it's D2, made in China, and the scales are brass, the price tag on this guy when it was available was $60. $60. That actually puts it in what I would consider to be the budget category. That's amazing for a whole bunch of reasons. I'm going to go over all of them. If you are new to my channel, I like to do knife reviews, knife overviews. I like to do unboxings. I like to do discussion topics. On Saturdays, I have a series called Quest for the Perfect Budget Knife. And on Sundays, I have a series called The Knife Guy. I like to upload content every single day. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and subscribe and make sure your notifications are set to all, because there's definitely more content coming. This knife was provided for review by my good buddy Chris Gonzalez. Thank you so much, Chris, for allowing me to review this. I actually suggested that he buy this, and it was shipped directly to my house from Chris. Really, really cool. Thank you. Now, just so everybody knows, because I know people are like, I don't even need to hear the review. I want to go buy just for the. I don't care exactly all the details. I want to go buy this right now. At the time of this video, Smoky Mountain Knife Works is sold out. I would imagine that they will restock these because a lot of people seem to like the idea of this. So I don't know. It depends on when you're watching this video, just to let you know before you rush over there. But either way, you might as well. You can go check if you want to. From tip to scale, we are looking at not quite 9 inches. It's like 8.8 inches overall. From tip to scale on the blade length, you're probably looking at about 3.8 inches. From tip to the end of the cutting edge, you're looking at almost exactly 3.5 inches, maybe just shy of 3.5 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, you can see there the Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall means that it's actually fairly close to the overall length. What's actually dwarfing the knife is the height and actually the thickness. I'll show you guys right now. We're looking at about 120 thousandths, 110 thousandths on the stock thickness here. We're looking at 190 thousandths on the Proponent there, and the scales are also much thicker. So this is a bigger knife for reasons beyond overall length. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall, again completely dwarfed. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches. One of the most, there's a lot of impressive things about this knife that are completely beyond utility. But truthfully, one of the most impressive things is the flipping action. A lot of this knife's action has to do with the fact that the blade is this gigantic honkin' hunk of D2. But they have the flipper tab in the right place. The detent is set up nicely. It's very smooth. It's easy for a knife this big to free drop on bearings, and it is running on bearings, by the way. But really, really impressive action. You can also readily deploy it with that massive thumb stud. And truth be told, I can actually do the reverse flick on that. Let me show you guys that one more time. I'm getting my thumb stuck in the wrong place. There we go. So I'm using the meat of my finger, and I'm pushing a little bit up and diagonally. Let me show you again. You can actually get the reverse flick with this guy. Very impressive action, though I'm not sure exactly how useful action like that is on a knife like this. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Really important factor here is weight. This is brass, and it's very thick. This should come as no surprise. 14.89 ounces, almost 15 ounces. That makes this officially, I believe, the heaviest folding knife that I have ever reviewed on this channel. It's actually even heavier than the Praetorian tie. What was the Praetorian tie? Something like 12 ounces? That was titanium. It was a 1/4 inch stock thick blade. S35 yen is the one I had, and 187 thousandths on the titanium scales, which is about the same thickness of the blade. So you can see here, that's how much heavier brass is than titanium. This knife comes in multiple forms, by the way. It has Artisan Cutlery actually has, they're interesting. They have a premium line, then they have a budget line, and then they actually have another affiliated budget line called CJRB. I actually have a CJRB knife in my possession. The Crag, I believe, is what this is. We'll talk about this at some other point. You can see there the similar parts of the pivot collar. But anyways, this would be Artisan Cutlery's direct budget line. So they have this D2 version of the knife, and then they have an upgraded version that's titanium and S35VN, probably a little bit lighter, still probably way overboard in terms of EDC. Then they have, as far as I know, there's a newer version of this knife coming out that's still in the budget range that has the D2 steel blade and a G10 scale. Now, I don't know if this is available. I did actually reach out to Artisan Cutlery and I said, hey, if you've got one of those G10 Proponents, I'd like to take a look at that. And they said, we'll check into it. They haven't gotten back to me yet, but I know that there will be a G10 and D2 version of this available, and I would imagine, obviously, that's going to be the lightest variant. These budget lines, whether you get one with brass like this at some point, I imagine maybe Smoky Mountain will do copper as well. Smoky Mountain seems to have copper and brass exclusives of the D2 variants of Artisan Cutlery knives, so it wouldn't surprise me if they do one of these in copper. I honestly could see them doing that next. But either way, whether it's G10, brass, or copper, if they do copper in the future, there are actually steel liners underneath this, which is making it even heavier. I don't know if brass is heavier than steel or vice versa, but just to be nice, they did go ahead and mill out those steel liners. I would imagine the milling on the inside is going to be a lot more meaningful on the G10 variants. We didn't actually use the calipers on the blade, and I always do that, so I'm going to go ahead and do it just so you guys can see on camera what we're looking at here. In terms of blade thickness, yeah, 0.19. If you want to see thickness on the handle scales, well, we're in the groove there. Let's go back here and do it right there. Make sure and zero it out. Go again so you guys can see on the scales. Yeah, 60,000. So it's not, it's not horrible. I've definitely had knives that are, the Praetorian tie was wider than that, definitely. But this is a big knife, plain and simple. Right off the bat, this is completely overboard for EDC. The size, the dimensions, everything like that. There are very few situations that I can think of where carrying a knife of this blade shape, this dimensions, this type of deployment, and the weight, this honestly, for a long ways off of anything that you would need a folding knife for, a fixed blade will take care of things more conveniently than this ever will. That's not really, I'm not going to go through this review and try and pretend for a second that this is really a knife that makes sense for EDC. If you like to EDC knives like this that are gigantic and heavy, and I totally get it. I love big, heavy, overbuilt knives, but I like them for novelty reasons. It's fun that this exists. It's interesting, it's cool, and it's also built really, really well. The fact that I could get this for 60 bucks, that's awesome, right? But let's not kid ourselves. This simply doesn't make a good EDC knife. So with that out of the way, let me go ahead and go over some details of the anatomy of this knife. We have a very aggressive Wharncliffe style blade, much in the same style as Andre de Villiers Butcher and Tack Butcher. Some things are in a little bit different place. Like I said, it looks like it was influenced by it, but it's still a different design. If we're going to say that it's a copy, then there's a whole bunch of knives out there that have the same blade style and design that also would be considered copies, and really it just looks like an aggressive Wharncliffe to me. It does come down to a surprisingly, I wouldn't say a thin edge, but definitely an edge that is not going to have trouble cutting things. Are you going to be conveniently and efficiently slicing an apple? No, you're not. That's just not going to be the case. But is it done well? Yeah, absolutely. Nice and sharp. Nice, slightly reflective, tumbling finish on there. Looks really, really good. As usual, I do not like that Artisan Cutlery puts China on the blade. I don't like that there's a serial number. I don't like the font that they're using. I don't mind Dirk Pinkerton's. By the way, this is a Dirk Pinkerton design. I think is the Fire Ant from Kaiser a Dirk Pinkerton design? I'm pretty sure that it is. I don't mind Dirk Pinkerton's designer logo there, but this and the font, that's just ridiculous. You can put D2 up there. I would have done just fine with the DP and the D2, and then leave everything else off of there. Don't mind Artisan Cutlery's logo. That's just fine. That's just my thoughts on that. Massive, massive thumb studs. I don't know if you're actually able to unscrew those. It looks like you might be able to with a flathead. They're huge. They're a little bit in the cutting path. You've got enough cutting edge to where, I mean, if you're really going to use this thing, you should be okay, I guess. Wharncliffes are good for draw cuts, and I guess self-defense, but we don't talk about that on this channel. I don't care about self-defense. So, yeah, they're a little bit in the way, but they match the style of the knife. And a lot of times when a knife is completely overkill and the design is just crazy and crazy on purpose, I can appreciate that. Actually, in this case, kind of like that the thumb studs are massively oversized. The jimping actually is effective. It's not super duper sharp. Actually, the shape ring's pretty impressive considering this is a budget knife, and they could have easily just, made those edges kind of unfinished. I think the tumbling on the blade has a lot to do with how well those are chamfered. Jimping's not aggressive. It'd be great with a bare finger or gloves. Nice large sharpening choil there. The flipper tab does have a little bit of jimping on it. There's no jimping down here, so the landing zone is nice and smooth. The blade overall just looks really, really handsome and really impressive. I really, really like the blade on this. It's got a few fingerprints on it. It's probably looking like, some incomplete marks in the blade or some burn marks or something like that. But rest assured, this blade, truthfully, is very clean and flawless. Sorry, still a little bit of fingerprints on there. We have brass scales that, again, have been nicely chamfered off. The brass scales are truly impressive. Let me give you a close-up look of how well these have been machined. Now, my fingerprints have been all over this knife for a little bit. It has started to develop a very light patina. It's not quite as reflective as it was. That's brass for you. Brass and copper do the same thing. There's no way to keep them ultra reflective, and I honestly think brass and copper look better after they've developed a little bit of a patina. But again, look at these machining lines. Everything nicely chamfered. No odd sharp points or anything like that. Everything is just perfectly machined to fit everything. Pivot here, you can see Artisan Cutlery signature pivot with, for whatever reason, an orange pivot color. Guys, Artisan Cutlery, whoever was in charge of the color scheme, why did you do orange with brass? It's fine, but why not like teal or green or just silver, like something that contrasts better with brass? Some people might like orange against brass, but as far as the color spectrum goes and what contrasts with what, I mean, based on the majority of people's opinions, I don't think orange and gold was the right choice, but that's fine, whatever. We do have perhaps one of the only things that's actually a little bit out of place on this knife, these little screws here, but you know what? They're not T6. It's actually just the size of the knife that's making them look so small. I believe those are T7 or T8. That's fine. They're just slightly out of place. A massive screw that looks a lot like the thumb stud back here, which as far as I understand, it's just an extra screw for the pocket clip. You can see there that they've milled out this area for the pocket clip, which is great. I love that. When you don't mill out that space, it makes the clip able to have a little bit of play. What's interesting, no, it's the same way on both sides. The pocket clip rests. It looks like it might fall into that groove there, but it doesn't. By the way, the maker I'm referring to with the handle is Greg Medford. This looks like a Medford handle. It's very similar. Again, it's like anybody who mills lines into their knives in the shape of, like cylinders, or it kind of looks like a horse pill or something like that. Medford does that with a lot of their designs. So does Crusader Forge. So does Kingdom Armory. You could say all of those guys. Borka Blades does it. If we're going to say that this is a copy of a Medford, you're going to have to come after a whole bunch of different makers. So do I think this is a copy? No. It was influenced by makers like Medford and some of those others that I named. It's not a direct copy. Anyways, I don't know why there's not two screws down here, but whatever. I guess they give you an extra one. That's fine. It looks a little odd in here. You can see the machining lines in there, but everything is nice and uniform, so I have no issues with that. Gigantic pillar back here. This doesn't really have a lanyard hole, and I wouldn't put one on it. It looks like an easy way to get it cut by the blade. But what's odd is you have standoffs that function just fine. You have two little tiny standoffs and one massive barrel standoff back here. These look a little bit out of place. I would have preferred one more screw and for it to look like this up here, You would have had to remove this probably altogether. And then another large barrel standoff just to kind of complete the look of the design. Is there anything wrong with this? No. It just looks a little off. The combination of the two random screws and then the one big one, and then you've got two random little tiny standoffs and one big barrel standoff. It's just a little bit weird. Pocket clip, I actually really love it. It's a plain, wide, symmetrical pocket clip that's got a nice dip in it. And that's got a, actually, for the entirety of the knife, you know, the bill might look a little bit obtrusive on a smaller knife, but it's really not that bad. And truthfully, getting this thing in and out of my pocket is a breeze. It's heavy, and I definitely notice it. I'm not talking about its carry profile. Its carry profile is awful. I mean, but it's not like Artisan Cutlery didn't know that. They knew what they were designing. I mean, this is just fun. It's cool, right? So I'm not going to pretend for a second that this is an easy carry knife. It does go in and out of the pocket easily. The pocket clip is designed well, and I like it, and it's not going anywhere. With those gigantic screws, all the surface contact, it's sitting nested into the scale. It's great. This side, much the same as the front. You do have, oddly enough, what looks like the proprietary side of the Hinderer knife is the adjustment side, so you actually need a spanner bit to do that. Whatever. This is a steel liner lock. It does lock up absolutely solid. It's very, very perfectly centered. No blade play up, down, left, or right. Looks it's still locked up in the exact same place, which looks to be about, I don't know, 45% contact on the blade. This knife has an additional feature that I find interesting. Unnecessary, but interesting. It has this, it comes with this little, pin. And when it's in the locked out position, you can stick it in here and twist it, and you keep twisting, keep twisting, keep twisting, all the way until it won't twist anymore, catching on that lanyard. And it goes all the way through to the other side. This knife can now not disengage at all. It cannot disengage. Do I think it's as strong as a fixed blade now? No, I don't know. I mean, it's still on a pivot, right? I mean, a fixed blade would have to break all the way across the tang. This knife would have to fail back by the stop pin on the pivot or by this pin, but the amount of force required to get the lock to disengage at this point is so far beyond what you'd ever need a folding knife for. It's safe to say that, yeah, that's got to be one of the strongest locking mechanisms I've ever seen on a knife. Is it stronger than a triad lock? I don't know. Does it really matter? Does it matter? I don't think people really even need the triad lock. I think it's cool, but a pin lock like this, they're not the first ones to do it. I've seen Crusader Forge do it. I'm sure somebody did it before Crusader Forge. It does make for an incredibly strong locking system. If you really needed to make sure that your knife was not going to disengage during use, it's not going to. I don't think that this has a weak tip. What I'm saying is that you will break the tip of this blade far before the lock disengages. But let me say that again. This does not have a weak tip. There's plenty of material down here, and it's got plenty of thickness to where I'm not worried about D2 breaking in those dimensions. But whether or not it's going to fail, no, it's not going to fail. The difference between this and a triad lock is it's simply more inconvenient. You have to carry the pin with you, whether you carry this weird rope lanyard it came with or you actually put your own G10 lanyard on you, whatever. You actually could make a lanyard out of it and maybe put it through there. I don't know. Maybe that would serve as it still wouldn't work. The blade kind of blocks it. So you just have to carry that on your keychain or something like that. It's a little bit inconvenient. So what do I think about this knife? Can I recommend it? Yeah, I can, and here's why. I'm not going to recommend this knife as like an EDC knife. Do I think people should carry this? Does it give you a benefit in utility or tacticalness or any? No, it doesn't give you any benefit. It's super cool. It's made well. It flips well. Locks out well. It's neat that it's got a pin lock. It's neat that a company is making these massively overbuilt knives in the budget category. These knives in 2012, 13, and 14 were pretty much exclusive to the massive upper tier of folding knives. I'm talking $800 and up would buy you one of these massively overbuilt knives. Now, these can be had in some lesser materials, but in the same feeling of quality, right? The same look, the same appeal for substantially less. So props to Artisan Cutlery for approaching it. Honestly, I'm going to say this. I want to see this from some other companies. It brings me the same type of joy that I get from my my Kaiser sheepdog. And I'll give you a size comparison to this right now. This knife is also impractical, but it's just fun that it exists. Sorry, I had to cut the video for time there because I still got more to say. It's fun that this knife exists. Do you need it? No. It's actually a little more practical than the Artisan Cutlery at only 8.5 ounces, but it's still the carry profile. It's just way too big. Both of these knives are so wide, they take up so much room in your pocket, they're just not practical to carry. But are they cool and fun? Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. It's crazy to me that these monster overbuilt flipper knives exist. I love this. Look, Kaiser's been really successful with this. Artisan Cutlery, I think, has been pretty successful with their original run of the Proponent. They made a smart move by making a budget version of it. I love this. Artisan Cutlery, keep making these awesome overbuilt versions, whether they're G10, they're brass, they're copper. I mean, this is fun. People get to handle these really crazy overbuilt knives for a price that most people, can manage, that really want to. So, just keep in mind, when I say I can recommend this knife, I am not for a second trying to say that this knife in any way, shape, or form makes sense as an EDC knife. It honestly doesn't. I can't really think of a scenario where I would suggest you carry this knife over anything else. There are folding knives that are going to do folding tasks better than, or folding knife type tasks better than this knife that have better benefits. And there are fixed blades out there that are definitely also going to be easier to carry and probably more efficient at any cutting task you'd imagine either. If you're going to buy this knife, buy it because it's cool, because it's unique and different, and it's just awesome. This knife just feels awesome. It's just fun. I hope that it's readily available. I think the G10 one, I think a lot of people are really going to like that, because it'll probably be about the same weight as the Sheepdog, about 8.5 ounces. So anybody who really does want to carry it just for cool factor, just as a conversation piece, you'll be dealing with only 8.5 ounces, or what I would guess about 8 to 8.5 ounces versus almost 15 ounces. Guys, I think that's pretty much all I could say about this knife. I've really had a lot of fun playing with this. In fact, this knife has brought me a level of joy that I have not experienced for a while. I like to, I don't like the crazy fantasy stuff, and as far as like embellishments, it's hit or miss with me, but for whatever reason, just massively overbuilt knives that are overbuilt for no reason bring me an interesting level of joy. And opening this knife up, unboxing it, if you haven't watched that unboxing, feel free to go back and watch it. I mean, this is literally the thumbnail. It's something like this, zoomed way up like that. Unboxing this would just brought me this amazing level of joy. Actually, no, I didn't even unbox it in the video. Actually, I said it in the video. I actually unboxed it right outside of the post office because I was so excited. And I opened it up, and it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was this big hunk of brass and D2, and it was a flipper knife on bearings. And it was just like, why it existed to me went out the window. I didn't care. It was the fact that it did exist that I just loved. I thought that was so cool. And there's no reason that you can't enjoy this. The snobs of the knife world will tell you that if it's not a Benchmade Griptilian, if it's not a Para 3, if it's not a PM2, then you can't carry it. You don't have to listen to them. You don't have to listen to, even I've got knives on my playlist that are recommended and not recommended. You can listen to me or not listen to me, but I'll tell you right now, I love stuff like this. It's fun, it's interesting, it keeps the knife world exciting. So thank you, Artisan Cutlery, for making this thing exist. I think that's awesome. But that's truthfully about all I can say about this knife, guys. So if you enjoyed this video or found it entertaining or informative in any way, shape, or form, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe to my channel, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.